The night Avery fell asleep on my shoulder and whispered my name. I thought my life was finally about to begin. I thought my best friend was about to become something more. I was wrong. By the end of that week, I wasn't just questioning her feelings. I was questioning my family, my past, and every quiet moment we had ever shared. And the worst part? Avery had been carrying the truth for a long time. Close enough to touch me. Too scared to tell me. My name is Noah Mercer. I was 31 that fall, living in Seattle, working as a freelance video editor out of a small apartment in Ballard. Most of my days were the same. Coffee, deadlines, rain on the windows, long hours in front of glowing screens. Avery Collins was the one person who made that routine feel alive. She was a pediatric nurse at Swedish. Smart, funny, calm in the kind of way that made other people breathe easier. We met 7 years earlier in a coffee shop on Capitol Hill after I took the wrong drink off the counter and she called me out in front of everyone. I bought her the right one, she bought me lunch, and somehow, that was it. From then on, she was part of everything. Sunday grocery runs, late-night drives when neither of us could sleep, texting each other stupid pictures from Trader Joe's, helping my mum set up Christmas lights every December. She knew I always checked the locks twice before bed. I knew she hated fireworks and never talked much about her family. That was the one closed door in her life. If I asked where she grew up, she'd give me the short version. Spokane, mostly her mum. Complicated story. Then she'd smile and change the subject. I never pushed. When you love someone, even quietly, you learn to accept the rooms they don't let you enter. And yes, I loved her. I never said it, not because I didn't want to, because I didn't want to lose what we already had. So I kept it where I kept everything else, behind my teeth. It happened on a Thursday night in October. Seattle was cold, wet, that kind of rain that looks soft until it soaks through your jacket. Avery had just finished a brutal shift, 12 hours, maybe more. I picked her up from the hospital because her car was in the shop, and she looked like she was running on fumes. We stopped by a quiet overlook near Kerry Park before heading home. That was our thing. Sit in the car, watch the city lights, say nothing if we didn't have to. She leaned back in the passenger seat and laughed at something I said. I don't even remember what it was now. Then she got quiet. A minute later, her head tipped sideways, onto my shoulder. I froze. Not because it was a huge thing, because with Avery, every small thing felt huge. I could hear her breathing. Slow, warm. Her hair smelled like rain and hospital soap. Outside, the city was all silver and black. Then, very softly, she said my name. Noah. Not loud, not playful, not awake. Just a whisper. A sad one. Like she was reaching for me from somewhere deep. My chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, not moving, barely breathing, letting myself believe something I had trained myself not to believe. Maybe she loved me too. Maybe all those years of almosts and near moments had finally caught up to us. Then her body tensed. She opened her eyes. And the second she realized where she was, on my shoulder, she pulled away like she'd touched a hot stove. Sorry, she said. Her voice was flat. I laughed a little. You were out. She stared at the windshield. Did I say anything? My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I should have told the truth. Instead, I smiled and said, No, you were just tired. She nodded once, too fast. Then she looked out into the rain and whispered, Okay. Good. Good. That word stayed with me the whole drive home. Not cute, not embarrassing. Good. Like she had been afraid of something. After that night, Avery changed. At first, it was little things. She started canceling plans. Sunday grocery runs became maybe next week. She stopped answering calls and replied with short texts hours later. She became weirdly careful with her phone. Once, at my apartment, she left it face down on the table. It lit up with a call from Linda Mercer, my mother. Before I could even process that, Avery rushed over and silenced it. I looked at her. She looked back at me like I had caught her stealing. "My mom called you?" I asked. Avery grabbed her coat. "She had a question about Christmas lights." "In October?" She didn't answer. She just said she was tired and left. That's when the air changed. Not just between us. Inside me. I started replaying everything. The night in the car. The way she asked if my dad had ever lived anywhere besides Seattle. The way she once stared too long at an old photo of him in my hallway. The weird silence after she asked how old I was when he died. Avery had always been private. But this felt different. This felt like she was standing in front of a locked door and trying to hold it shut with both hands. A few days later, she came to my apartment after midnight. She was soaked from the rain, pale, shaking. "Can I stay here tonight?" she asked. "Of course." She stepped inside, looked over her shoulder into the hallway, then locked the door behind her. I had never seen her like that. I handed her a towel. "What happened?" "Nothing. Avery. If anyone asks," she said quietly, "I wasn't here." I laughed once, nervous. "That's not a normal sentence." "I know." She rubbed her face and sat at the edge of my couch. For a second, she looked like she was about to tell me everything. Then her eyes landed on a framed family photo on my bookshelf. Me at 14. My mom. My dad. She looked away fast. But not before I saw it. Tears. That night, she slept in my room while I stayed on the couch. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of her talking in her sleep. Not full sentences, just fragments. "Noah." Then, "I'm sorry." I didn't sleep again. I wish I could say I handled it like a mature adult. I didn't. Fear makes you stupid, and hope makes you worse. The next morning, Avery left early for work. In the rush, she forgot her canvas tote bag by my kitchen table. I picked it up to bring it downstairs before she got too far. That's when it tipped over. A folder slid out, cream-colored, thick, bent at the corners. Across the front, in black marker, was one word. Mercer. My last name. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened it. Inside were copies of old documents. A birth certificate with parts blacked out, a lab receipt from a DNA testing company, a faded photograph of my father when he was young, maybe late 20s, standing beside a woman I had never seen before. On the back, in blue ink, were the words, "For June and our little star." My hands went numb. I heard the front door of the building slam downstairs and snapped back to reality. I shoved everything back into the folder, put it in the tote, and ran outside. Avery was already gone. I called my mother right away. She didn't pick up, so I drove to her house in West Seattle. When she opened the door, one look at my face told her something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. I held up the photograph. "Who is this?" The color drained out of her face. That was all the answer I needed. She tried to take the photo from my hand. I pulled it back. "Mom." She sat down slowly at the kitchen table. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and rain tapping against the window. Then she said, "You need to talk to Avery." "No, I need to talk to you." She closed her eyes, and that scared me more than anything. Because my mother was not a woman who closed her eyes when life got hard. "She came to me 2 months ago," my mom said. "Who?" "Avery." I actually laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Why?" My mother looked at the photograph in my hand. "Because she thought your father might have been her father too." The room went completely still. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. It felt like my body had forgotten how. "What?" "She had letters," my mom said. "Old ones. Her mother kept them. There was enough there to make her wonder. She wanted the truth before she told you." I stared at her. No. No way. Avery? My Avery? My best friend? The woman I had loved in silence for years? "She's lying," I said. But even as I said it, I knew she wasn't. Because every strange moment suddenly had a shape. Every question, every look, every silence. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I asked her not to tell you until the results came back." The results? She swallowed. They came back yesterday. My voice barely worked. And? Before she could answer, I heard a car door outside. Both of us looked toward the window. Avery had just parked in the driveway. I walked out onto the front porch before she made it to the steps. She stopped cold when she saw the photo in my hand. For a second, neither of us spoke. The rain had softened to mist. Her hair was damp. Her face looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "You opened the folder," she said. I nodded. "You were going to tell me?" She looked at my mother through the doorway, then back at me. "Yes." "When?" Avery let out a shaky breath. "When I could do it without destroying you." I laughed again. That same broken laugh. "Bit late for that." She stepped closer, but not too close. "I found out after my mom died," she said. "She left me a box. Letters. Photos. One name kept coming up. Daniel Mercer. My father. I came to Seattle because I wanted answers," she said. "That was all." I felt sick. "How long have you known?" "I suspected for a year. I knew for sure yesterday." The air left my lungs. Yesterday. The day after she slept on my shoulder. The day after she said my name. "Did you meet me on purpose?" I asked. That question hurt more than all the others. Avery's eyes filled instantly. "Yes." The word hit like ice water. "I heard your name when the barista called it out at that coffee shop," she said. "Mercer. I thought maybe it was a coincidence. Then I saw your last name on your card. I should have walked away. I know I should have. But you didn't." "No." "Why?" Her voice broke. "Because you smiled at me." That did it. That was the sentence that cracked something open in me. Not because it was romantic, because it was honest. Painfully honest. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I thought I'd ask a few questions and leave, but then you were funny and kind and easy to be around, and after a while, you weren't just a name connected to my past anymore. You were my best friend." I looked away from her, out at the wet street, the grey sky, the mailbox at the curb, anything but her face. "I need you to answer one thing," I said. She nodded. "That night in the car, when you said my name." Avery closed her eyes. When she opened them, she was crying. "I had just gotten a call from the lab," she said. "I already knew what they were going to say. I think part of me was dreaming about telling you. Part of me was grieving before it was even real." I couldn't speak. "I wasn't confessing love," she said softly. "I was saying goodbye to the version of us that could have been simple." That hurt because it was true. Because somewhere inside me, I had built a whole future out of one whispered word, and she had built a whole wall around a truth she never wanted to weaponize against me. My mother came to the door, but neither of us looked at her. Avery took one small step back. "If you hate me," she said, "I'll understand." I looked at her then, really looked at her, at the person who had carried this alone, at the fear in her face, at the guilt, at the years we had already shared. And I realized something awful and beautiful at the same time. The truth had changed everything, but it had not erased what was real. She had still shown up for me. She had still sat with me after breakups, still made my mother laugh, still brought soup when I got the flu, still been home in her own strange way. "I don't hate you," I said. My voice cracked on the last word. "I just don't know where to put this." Avery nodded like she expected nothing more, and somehow that made it worse. We sat on my mother's porch until the sky turned from grey to pale silver. No music, No dramatic speeches, just three people breathing through the wreckage of a truth that had waited too long. My father had been dead for 15 years. There was no confrontation coming, no final explanation, no clean ending, just letters, a photograph, a lab report, and a woman I loved in one way yesterday and had to learn how to love differently today. Avery told me her mother met my father during a brief separation in my parents' marriage. She never asked him for anything, never came looking. She raised Avery alone, and before she died, she left the truth in a box. That felt cruel at first, then human, because that's what people do. They leave their hardest truths for other people to clean up. A week passed before I saw Avery again. Not because I didn't want to, because I needed to let the fantasy die with dignity. The fantasy that her head on my shoulder meant romance, that her whisper meant hope, that the ache in my chest was leading somewhere simple. When we finally met, it was at the same overlook where everything changed. Same rain, same city lights, different world. We stood beside the car for a while before either of us spoke. Then Avery looked at me and said, "I didn't just come here for answers, Noah. I stayed because you mattered to me. That part was real." I nodded. "So was mine," I said. She started crying. So did I. And for the first time, neither of us tried to hide it. I don't know if stories like this are supposed to end with closure. Mine didn't. Not really. Some losses are strange. You don't lose a person. You lose a future you secretly built around them. But sometimes, if you're lucky, what remains is still love, just wearing a different name. Now, when people ask about Avery, I pause for half a second. Not because I'm ashamed, because I'm still getting used to the truth. Then I smile and say, she's family. And every time I say it, I hear that night again. The rain, the silence, her head on my shoulder, my name in the dark. Back then, I thought it was the beginning of a love story. Maybe it was, just not the one I expected. And somehow, that made it even harder to forget, and impossible not to tell.